Hi, I'm Tom, a digital media assistant here at Buckinghamshire New University. We're proud to be launching the first episode of our brand new podcast series, It Begins With Us, where our students will be talking about their experiences and advice on a range of hot topics. We're kicking off this series with a discussion around students' mental health and what support services the university has to offer. We know that mental health is often a taboo subject, and given the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, we hope this podcast starts an important and much needed discussion around our health and well-being. Today we'll be hearing from Jasmine, Abby, Sean and Bernie, who are all students here at Buckinghamshire New University. Let's get started. So welcome everyone. It'd be great if you could all introduce yourselves by giving your name, course, year of study and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm a third year film and TV production student and I'm from Lancashire.
So I'm Bernie. I study performing arts in film, TV and stage. I'm in my third year and I live in Norfolk.
I'm Jasmine. I'm on the mental health nursing course. I'm finishing off my first year placement, which I started in March of last year. And I live in High Wycombe.
Hi, I'm Abby and I am on the dance and performance course. I am also in my third year and I am from Staffordshire, a few hours away.
Cool, thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. Is everyone based at High Wycombe campus or anyone at Uxbridge or Aylesbury?
High Wycombe.
I'm at Uxbridge.
High Wycombe as well.
That's great, thanks. So I'm just going to start off by getting a better understanding of what mental health means to you.
I guess it means a lot more than I think. You know, you think about mental health and you think about kind of the scary kind of side of mental illness and, you know, self-harming behaviours. But actually, I think for me, mental health is making sure that you've got like that balance between like recovery and just good like mental health in general, making sure that you've got the skills just like you do to look after your physical health, you've got the skills to look after your mental health. Like it's they correlate.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of the little things that count, not so much, well, yes, the big things as well, but obviously the little things too. I think it's kind of like underrated as well, like compared to physical health. Like you hear loads of like research going on about like, I don't know, cancer and COVID, but even though mental health is really important, you don't hear as much research going on behind it. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, with mental health, I feel like it is such a taboo subject and it shouldn't be. And it really should be about how you treat yourself with your physical, like with your physical health. It should be the same with your mental health because everyone experiences mental health. We all have it. And it's a really sad thing that people are most likely going to experience one negative mental health experience at least once in their life. And that needs to be taken like notice of. And it needs to be taught more in schools and just how to, like, as Jasmine said, like, make sure you have the recovery and how to deal with things and treat it like you would with your physical health, making sure that you have access to things around you that can help your mental health, really, to me.
I think it's a lot more common than people think it is as well. Like, I remember when I was younger, I used to think, like, barely anybody had any mental health issues, but now, like, it's like really, really common, especially during a global pandemic when we can't even go outside our house.
Yeah.
I just think it's more like present than it feels like it is.
Yeah, I think we talk about it a lot more than we used to as well, which is important. Like as you said, like growing up, you'd think like nobody struggled with their mental health, it was just you. But as you get older, you kind of realise that actually it's not just you and you could literally be sat next to somebody who is experiencing mental health issues as well. So
yeah, it's quite strange to be fair because talking about experiencing it as a younger person, Like, I remember I used to be a big fan of like YouTubers, and I don't know if anyone else used to be. If not, this is going to be quite cringy.
Yeah.
But I used to watch Zoella, of course. And I remember one of her first videos about anxiety, and I was like, what is that? And then from that moment on, like, my life changed. Like, obviously for the better, because understanding it and starting to learn about it, and like knowing that years on I also was going to suffer with it. Honestly, I think it needs to be talked about more within younger people, but then also bringing into the pandemic with it, like, and how children are going to be affected, and like everyone, of course, but relating it to the children aspect, like a whole table in your, like, in a primary school class are now going to be heavily affected with mental health issues because of the effects of the pandemic, and that's going to be a lot with uni students as well. So yeah, it's just very important that we do talk about it, and I think this podcast is a good starting point for that. So yeah.
It's funny you bring up that video, Bernie, because that particular panic attacks video, I was experiencing panic attacks when I first watched it at 14, and I watched it and I was like, this whole video suddenly makes my life make sense. I was like, I don't know what it is that this scary thing is that I'm going through, but you've just put it into words, and that's what that is.
Yeah, very helpful.
Cool, so that's great, thanks for that. I know Abby and Bernie, you both touched on it yourselves, but how have you found being a university student during a global pandemic, and what sort of challenges have you faced?
Tough. That's the only way I can explain. Yeah, it's been weird. I was meant to be out on placement, as I said, like briefly earlier, but that got stopped. I was literally out for 5 glorious weeks, and then got pulled, and I'm still yet to complete it. So yeah, it's been a bit tough, but I think because everyone understands what's going on a bit more, people can give more definitive answers than they could a year ago. So yeah, a year ago things were literally couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel with it, whereas now I think we're all in much better places with it.
With my sort of experience and with the pandemic and mental health, it's been very challenging throughout, I would say. I mean, obviously you get days where it'll be really good and you feel really productive, you're doing a lot of work, but then you get days, and multiple days in my experience, where you just don't have any motivation. In fact, there will always be one particular day that I remember, and that is when it got announced that my dissertation, which was a practical, got turned into a portfolio. And I remember just walking around my house, literally not knowing what to do, because everything I had worked for had just stopped and was being changed, and I was like, oh my God, it was like an out-of-body experience. I just didn't know how to react to it. So it's definitely been tough. And obviously you have to adapt to new norms, and that's not easy either. But yeah, it's not been easy at all, I would say. And I feel like university students and their mental health has been pushed to the side like it's nothing. Luckily, we have Bucks, and Bucks is a lovely support system with it.
Yeah, from my experience, I feel like my mental health has gotten better since the pandemic, which might be controversial, but I feel like we've had a lot of more time to focus on ourselves and to improve. But then also there's obviously the bad side, and I think mainly would be social media and being able to compare yourselves on social media, especially because I'm on dance course and I see people putting up dance videos of them and they're so good and they have all this space in their house to do it, but I have literally a little box room, and it just makes your self-esteem drop. But yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest challenges, I think.
I know you've all touched upon this in one way or another, but how would you say you look after your mental health best?
I think especially at uni, because it's a pretty sort of lucid time, I guess, there's not much responsibility or anything like that you sort of have to focus on. So I think having some sort of structure in place is probably one of the most important things for looking after your sort of your headspace at uni. Not as in you have to get up at 6 o'clock every morning and eat your meals at the exact same time or whatever. But I think having some sort of like loose structure in place is pretty essential, really, not just for uni as well, just for sort of like general life. Like, if you're working part-time, get like the same few days every week, or keep your lectures and all of that sort of.
I definitely need to do that, because I find I have like days just lying in bed and I don't do anything. I'm like, oh, I can just do it tomorrow. But like, I think to-do lists like kind of like the same. I think they're really helpful. Like, I've literally bought like so many notebooks for like all these to-do lists, and I find they're really helpful. And as well, having a positive mindset is really changed. Like, this time last year I was really negative, like Jasmine said, about how you couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel and it was all like up in the air of what's going on. So yeah, like trying to change to have a positive mindset has really helped.
I guess for me, I like at the start of this like January, I got it's a book that I can just jot down like how I've been feeling in the day. Like, it gives me that space to kind of write down and reflect upon my day, and it's got like a little mood tracker thing that I use with like coloured pens, and I guess it's really helpful just at like a couple of points in the day to go, okay, right, how am I feeling, what's going on, like properly just check in with myself. And I think that's definitely helped to know that I'm in touch with my own emotions. So yeah, I think that's a really key thing to be doing to look after yourself.
I would say talking is probably one of the first steps you can do to really hone down on mental health. There's a saying that I've been told multiple times by someone very special to me, and that is, a problem shared is a problem halved. And if you're struggling with something, there are people around you, even if they're struggling, who want to help, and whether that's just to listen or to give you advice or for you to just sob on the phone for an hour, that's okay too. I feel like I've been there a couple of times, and I'm sure many other people have as well. But along with that, fresh air, even during the winter times. I know we've had a lot of snow recently, but getting out and making sure you can have a short walk will probably help your day as well. Those are my top tips, I would say.
Yeah, I know we've all touched on it briefly, but having time to yourself, spending less time on social media, talking to others, and just being honest with ourselves, I think is probably a fair reflection. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, of course, that takes us on to the next point. Kind of already covered this in various ways, but if you saw someone on the street and you had to give them one top tip on how to look after their mental health, what would you say to them?
When somebody asks you if you're okay, be honest, take that opportunity. How are you is the most opening question for someone. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I think it was the Samaritans did an advert of a man at a train station, and this woman came along and just engaged him in a little bit of conversation, and what she didn't know was that he was feeling like he wanted to end his own life, and just opening a conversation with somebody can be the difference between a bad day and a slightly better day.
Yeah, I think the being able to sort of be like open and honest with anyone that you ever see is like, I don't know, I think it's seeing someone on the street and trying to give anyone advice. I think it's a bit of a crazy one, because like who are you that why would anyone listen to you if they're having like a bad day or whatever? I think especially if someone is in some some really dark place, I think it's unlikely for them that they can see past tomorrow, So sorry, that's a bit of a downer on the but I think it's just, I don't know, it's just sort of important to understand that like some people you can't help unless you're going through something that's equally bad, or I mean also equally good. So I think that's just something to bear in mind.
Yeah, it's difficult to understand their point of view, I guess, as well. Like, you don't know what they've been through, you don't know their background, you don't know who they are. So, I know what you mean. I'd say I would probably recommend them, like, some self-help books, because I started reading, like before this time last year, I didn't pick up a book since year 10, and I do not like reading at all, although I'm at university. Yeah, I would recommend them probably. There's a book called The Power of Now, which really focuses on, like, the present and not worrying about the past and not worrying about the future, but, like, focus on what you are feeling right now and, like, what you're grateful for and things like that. So, books have really been helpful since this time last year for me, so I'll say that.
If I was to walk past someone in the street and know what they were going through, or if I could say anything to them, I would say, like, it's going to be okay, and it might not feel okay right now, and that's also okay. It's okay to feel really down, and it's okay to question things, but it's not okay to suffer in silence, and that's probably the main thing for me. You don't have to go, like, running to everyone saying, I'm struggling with this, and this, but even writing it down in a book for yourself to let it out could really help. And once you focus on those things and focus on tomorrow, and I know, as Sean, you said, like, sometimes some people don't see it to tomorrow, but trying to realise that today is one day, and don't let that define who you are or what you can be. And just remember that tomorrow is going to be a brand new start, and try to find at least one positive thing in each day, whether it be you like the socks you're wearing, or you really like the taste of that sandwich you just ate, because everything in life has a sweetness to it, and if you look for it, you're going to find it. So even if it may seem really pathetic and really small, it's not. If that's what's going to get you through that day, then it's going to be okay. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
I think you all make some good points about not looking back at the past and not looking too far ahead in the future, because that's when anxiety comes to the forefront. Living in the moment is the best thing we can do for our mental health, really. So contradicting that, I want you to cast your minds back to when you started at Bucks. We know that starting university can both be nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time. Going back to your first year, how did you feel when moving into halls or commuting for the first time?
I think, like, up until literally, like, the day I arrived, I sort of just forgot about it, which is pretty weird, but, like, just sort of ignored it until I was there. And then I think that was definitely the wrong thing to do. So, like, I don't know, I can't remember much from the first night, but that's more, alcohol induced than anything else. But I remember being, like, really, really, like, nervous to meet people on the first night, which is weird because I never am. But that first night, there was, like, 9 people that I've never met before that now I'm just going to be with all the time. And there was something about that was just a little bit terrifying. So my advice is don't ignore uni until you get there. And be confident.
Up until I moved to uni, I'd been quite unwell. Like, the last academic year, I'd really struggled with my mental health. So moving to uni for me was quite a challenge, both for me and for my family, really, because even though I live in High Wycombe, I still moved into Hughenden Halls for the literally the social aspect, and I can do it. I can prove to myself that I can make a washing machine wash my clothes and that I'm not going to burn, pasta in the pan. And I proved it to myself. I did, but it definitely didn't come without its challenges. I still was quite unwell, but I think it definitely, when I moved out in April and came back here when the pandemic hit, I definitely came back knowing that there were things I could do that I didn't think I could do. And I think that's something massive to take away from uni. Go knowing the little things that you want to achieve. Yeah, all right, the end goal is your degree, but the little things like going on a night out spontaneously, or
cooking a meal without burning anything or giving yourself food poisoning, or managing money. Like little things like that are so important to take away from moving in.
I personally really didn't like my moving into halls. Like, I didn't know my anxiety was that bad until I actually got there, and that was a really big issue because I barely went into the kitchen because I was at Hughenden as well, and I was sharing a kitchen, and I barely went in there, and it was horrible. Like, I hated it. But I think my tutor recommended me to go see the counselling service about it, and that really helped. Like, even if it was just for them to listen to you, to not let like your parents worry, because I know I didn't want to talk to my parents because I didn't want them to worry about me, and I hadn't made any like close friends yet, so it was kind of hard to confide in people that you don't really know. So I think going to the counselling service was really useful in my first year, and I'll definitely recommend it for like all first years to go if you've got like anxiety and depression and things like that.
That's actually such a good point. And it's really good that you were able to have access to that, especially just arriving. The fact that people are so supportive within the first few like days or weeks is also really good. I mean, I had a slightly different experience because before uni, I was someone who was really shy and someone who, I don't know, I was just really reserved in many ways, and that's because of some experiences back in sixth form. However, as soon as I stepped into Brook Street's gates, and I met my flatmates, I don't know what came out of me. Someone I had never met before. I was just moving all my stuff in, and I was the shortest one out of everyone. Someone said that they thought I was the little sister of someone moving in, and I kind of got offended, but I kind of let it go. I'm joking. But next thing I remember is I'm sitting around a table full of people I don't know, with people from different countries, which I'd never met anyone before because I haven't been abroad. I come from trees and fields. I don't come from other areas really. But all of a sudden I'm learning Polish words and shoving grapes into my mouth, and everyone's laughing, and I'm like, oh wow, this is quite fun. And then it was a very good start to a good journey, but I definitely understand that anxiety is going to be so high for a lot of people moving in, like especially if you were like me and you came from such a small area. It's definitely expected. And to, like, as Abby said, to reach out to people, anyone in the university, whether it's your lecturer or, you know, accommodation service, and be like, hi, I've just moved in, I'm nervous, can you help me, is such an important thing to do.
I think you make a good point there. So, like, Abby, kind of two extremes really. Abby didn't really enjoy moving into halls to start with, but after that university support, she felt better for it. Is that right, Abby?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And on the other hand, we've got Bernie, who was shy and reserved, and then moving into Brook Street was like opening up a new book, starting a new life almost. So that's why it's really important just to understand what everyone's going through, and also ask, how are you? Because we're all experiencing the same thing. Like, moving into halls is the same thing, but how we're dealing with it can be completely different, and that's all okay. It's okay not to be okay, is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, I definitely remember, just quickly to add to that, I remember so many people telling me, so many people are going to be feeling just like you, it's okay to be nervous, it's okay. And I was recommended by lots of friends who are older than me that when I moved in, it's okay to be nervous and to be shy. Just don't let that stop you. If you need the support, go out and get the support. Because it will only restrict you if you stop yourself. So then, as Abby was saying, like, having this university, having a support system is really important when you first start uni.
That's really strange, because before I moved to uni, everyone was like, oh, it's going to be the best time of your life, you're going to enjoy it so much, and like all these positive things. And then when I got there, I felt nothing but like negative thoughts. So I think that really like put a damper on things and like made everything worse, because nobody said how hard it is. Like, because I've like, my family's never been to university. I'm the first one out of everyone. So they all think it's all fun and games and it's great. But yeah, it is. But also it is really hard to be independent and just move in with loads of random people.
Jasmine, sorry, I thought I interrupted you earlier. Did you want to come in on anything?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, like, it's, the counselling service, I rebuffed their help so many times in the first, few months that I was living in halls. And it was when I got to the point that my mental health, was really, I was, I couldn't get out of bed, that I was like, okay, maybe actually... okay, I'm going to stop arguing here with the uni and I'm actually going to tell them, all right, yeah. And I've been seeing, Karen in the counselling service for over a year now, supporting me with, all of the things that come with the conditions that I have. And I genuinely do not know where I would be if the counselling service hadn't stepped in to support me. I think I think there needs to be far less stigma around going, yeah, actually, all right, I do need some help, and the counselling service are the people for it. It isn't just sitting in an office and talking about how sad you are or whatever. It's, it's that space to be you unashamedly and without judgment.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I'll just take it back to when I was at university and halls. It's quite hard sometimes when other people in your flat are doing other things and you can spend so many hours in your room at times. So that's why it's really important to accept that, okay, you might not be okay in the moment, and then what are you going to do about it? Because I think a lot of people say, oh, I'm not feeling great, and then don't do anything about it. They won't speak to anyone. They won't go and access any support. But taking that next step is probably the hardest, but also the most crucial point of a journey. I think, is that fair enough to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
Cool. That kind of brings me nicely onto my next point. Together All. I don't know if you guys have heard of Together All, but I'll just give a brief introduction on what they do. So an online support service, which is free to access for all Buck students. They basically provide students with anxiety, depression, and other common mental health issues, with a range of support things. So they've got resources, courses you can do. So I'm just looking now. So some of their resources are, you can do self-assessments. So if you're worried that you might have anxiety, worried that about a drinking issue perhaps or drug issue, you can log online and do a simple self-assessment. And that kind of, although it's online, it's raising awareness of some issues that you have that you might not think you have. And they've got a range of courses as well. So things like cutting down on drinking, improving your sleep, how you manage anger, other things such as managing health anxiety, OCD, panic attacks. It's all about how we can manage them. So I'm just wondering if any of you guys have accessed Together All or any of their services.
I can't say I've heard anything about it, no.
I've set up an account, I think within my first 2 weeks of uni, and didn't touch it. And then I've set up a new account because, as classic as I am, I've forgotten my login. Yeah, I'm still exploring it, but I think it definitely, if you are isolated from people and you don't feel like there are people around you that you can speak to, or if you're on a waiting list, I think it's a good in the middle kind of thing, as you say, kind of the quizzes you can do in terms of self-assessment. I think those sorts of things are really important, just so that people can go, okay, I'm not going crazy.
I personally haven't used it, but I know people who have. But when I was asking them about it and we was talking about it, they didn't want to go into too much detail because I wanted to keep that private, which obviously you have to respect. But one thing that they did say about it is that if they didn't have that, because they didn't want to go to the university themselves, they wanted to have something on their phone. They said that if they didn't have that there, they honestly don't know where they would have been. So the fact that it's free to all Buck students is something extremely important, and I feel like it needs to be talked about more as soon as you move in, because I didn't hear about it until I joined the DA team. So I don't know if it's a new thing, but if it isn't, I genuinely think that maybe we need to get the voice out there of Together All, especially, as you said, when moving in on that first day, and making people aware of the services that we have around them. And Together All is one that is definitely so important, because you're going to get people who are going to be anxious about talking in person anyway. Like my brother personally, he doesn't like talking on the phone, and he doesn't like talking face to face when it comes to really serious matters. He likes to do it like with online, like emails or something. So having that other access is really important.
It used to be called the Big White Wall. I think that's what the biggest thing is that people are not aware of the name change. So if you knew of the Big White Wall, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, that's when I went on it, when it was called that. I think I made an account when I was in my first year, and I went on it for like, I'd say like a few months at the start of my first year, and it helped me to, like, I used it to like journal in a way. Like you can like make little posts and questions, kind of like Reddit and stuff. And I think I did a course around like self-confidence or something, and it was actually really interesting. So yeah, and I think that's where my journaling came from as well. I think I started doing it through, well, Together All, and then it developed like into actual like writing, which is like really helpful.
That's great. I think it's probably important to touch on that not everyone's going to use the service, and you don't have to access it. It's just if you feel like you need that support and want some advice, it's there for you to use at times. So the fact that we've all used it, I know Abby, you say you've used it in certain ways, Bernie, your friends have used it in certain ways, whereas Sean and Jasmine haven't particularly touched it, that's fine. You know, that's a support service there for you if you need to use it. So now I'm just going to ask a couple of you some questions about your courses and how you found it over the past year. So Jasmine, what has it been like for you over the past year as a mental health nurse and the pressures that come with that?
I can't lie, it's been like really quite overwhelming. As I mentioned, I was quite unwell, and I think for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself to not show that side of me while I was training, because I, you know, in my head I was like, oh, if I show that I struggle, they'll take me off the course, which ended up not really working in my favour, because I then in turn, by bottling it up, as we've discussed, I ended up making myself more unwell. And it's been difficult to see as a nursing student people that are very anti-COVID, kind of in a way still thinking that it's a hoax put together by the government. And you know, it's a very political subject. We won't get too far into it, but yeah, I think it's been difficult to, as I said earlier, see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can kind of see that now. I'm stamping my feet and going, you need to communicate with me. You can't just leave me in the dark, which I know a lot of university students have felt like they're literally wandering around with their eyes closed. But yeah, definitely, I'm missing my placements. I'm missing being in the classrooms with people. One of my favourite things about Bucks is being with other nursing students, because they all have the same passions that I do. They all care about patients and want to help patients, and not being around those sorts of people for nearly a year now is so bizarre.
Cool. So yeah, you touched on that nursing has been quite hard for you the past year. So once you finished a nursing shift or whilst you're on placement, what's it like for you how do you unwind after a day of hard work?
I made myself like a good routine when it came to placement. Obviously, I was still living in halls while I was there, so I'd be leaving in the morning, making sure that I'd like made my bed so that I didn't get back into it the second that I walked back into the flat. And I'd get back, I'd have something to eat, I would watch something funny. You know, I would drive home from placement. I was fortunate enough to be able to drive. And I'd make sure that I had like a really upbeat playlist on as I drove home, so that I if anything heavy had happened while I was on the ward. The ward I was on was it was a rehabilitation unit for patients with long and enduring mental health issues, such as schizophrenia. So obviously being around, you know, patients that are that acutely unwell can be really difficult. But yeah, making sure that I kind of was going, okay, well, I might be back tomorrow, I might be back in 2 days' time, but let's make sure that I'm leaving that sort of thing at the door of placement, so that when I'm entering my own flat, I don't talk about placement apart from, yeah, it went okay. I don't, you know, once I've left the building, that's placement done. I go home, and home is my home. You know, I did any kind of work for the uni, I did any of my volunteering stuff. I made sure that I had that like literal break between the two places in my head, so that I didn't, you know, compromise my safe space.
That's great. So Abby and Bernie, just going to ask you a couple of questions now. So what's it been like for you as a performing arts student over the past few years?
I think the written side, it's been fine. I've actually enjoyed it more than probably what would be like at uni, because for me, I'm not the kind of person to like ask questions in class. I don't really put my hand up much. I'm really shy and like introverted, so doing that in the classroom is like really like anxious, makes me anxious. So the fact that I can do it all online and it's just like a little chat box, it feels a lot more easier to communicate with my teachers, for me at least. But then for the practical side, it's just been very weird. Like it's not bad, but it's not good. It's just meh. It's like it really depends on like your environment. Like I don't think it's fair that like someone with a rich house could have like all the space in their living room to like dance and stuff, whereas like some other people might not have that space, and it's not fair. So I don't know, it's been good and bad for me.
Yeah, it's for my course, it's been an interesting one. I know that sounds so vague, but I'll go into more detail. I know that a lot of people in my course have really struggled when it comes to motivation, and being creative, whether that be within acting, directing, writing, stage management, anything. Costume or makeup as well, like anything. It can be so hard when you don't have the facilities, and especially when you're getting graded on something, it makes it worse. But then obviously being able to change that into, like, for example, my practical dissertation being turned into a portfolio, it's not nice at all, if I'm honest, because the arts that I was doing was my form of coping with normal life as it was, but then having that taken away and you can't do that anymore, and you really want to show your passion and you want to, you know, move on, you just can't. It's just really hard. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, right at the beginning of COVID, when we had our first lockdown, there was a module in my second year about movement, and I know loads of people really struggled this. Like Abby said, some people really don't have a lot of space, and it just made it really tough to even find the motivation to do it when you don't have the facilities around you. I was really lucky to have a bit of my garden quite free at the time, and the weather was really nice. So I was like, that's the only place I've got, so I'm gonna use that. By the end of it, I'm pretty sure my lecturer was really sick of the pheasants and things in the background squawking, but at the end of the day, that's all I had access to, so I had to use it. It's definitely not been easy. I think motivation is the thing a lot of people on my course have struggled with. I know a lot of people have said that to me. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So now, entering the final few questions of this podcast, just going to open this one up to the group. How have you been keeping in contact with your friends, people on your course, lecturers? Like, we've all been at home for the past year, so how have you been keeping in contact with everyone? Whether it's quizzes or anything like that.
I think Snapchat got cool again during lockdown. Like mainly that, a whole lot of group chats, I think, but not like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of group chats and a lot of FaceTime is the favourites between my friends at the moment anyway.
Yeah, I think video calls, like the amount of Zooms I've set up and just talked randomly, like it doesn't even have to like be about like uni. It can literally be about like what you had for dinner yesterday or something. And like me and my friends, like we usually every Tuesday we've like set a time for us to like, after a class we like stretch together and like talk about how our like lessons have been and how we're getting on with our dissertations and stuff. So yeah, I've just been doing lots of Zoom calls.
I don't even want to think about how much money Zoom must have made over this lockdown with everybody getting, I think, quizzes. I know in recent months my friends have like been like, right, okay, we're going to do a quiz, we're going to have drinks, we're going to have a nice night. But like, I've not really had, because on my course most of the students are actually mature students. They've all still got lives. They're all still working. Obviously we're on practical courses, so most of them are HCA, so they're out and about. So for me, I've had to look kind of more locally. I'm really fortunate in that both of my mum's sisters and indeed two of my dad's sisters live really close by. So, you know, I've been video calling them. I've been going out for walks. But yeah, friends-wise, it's definitely been Zooms, using House Party, all sorts of like, video calling apps, which is, important.
Jasmine, I'm just going to come in on you on that one. I know
Okay.
we went on air, you said that you were walking, was it 20 miles in 20 days?
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I'm a volunteer for a suicide hotline called SOS, or Silence for Suicide. And I've been doing that since October. And basically, we're such a little charity, and it's my 20th birthday on the 3rd of March. So 20 days prior to my birthday, I started doing the 20 miles in 20 days challenges that I put together for myself, which, is as simple as it sounds. But for someone who has literally not played any kind of proper sport since primary school, it's been quite the challenge. But I think it's so important to, be aware of charities at the moment that do need that support, because I know that I've spoken to so many young, vulnerable students who have really struggled over this lockdown. But yeah, when that's done on the 3rd of March, and this is actually the first time that I've spoken this properly out loud, I am going to be doing a sponsored skydive for this charity on the 1st of May. So yeah, really excited to do that. So yeah, I'm massive on charity fundraising.
That's so scary. That's so brave.
That's absolutely amazing, honestly. Well done to you. And if you're listening to this, go check that out. Go.
So out of my comfort zone, but you know what? You only live once, don't you? And you only get this sort of opportunity to do it once. So yeah, I'm doing that with them.
I think having that positive mindset is brilliant, and what you're doing is amazing. So that's really good to hear.
Thank you.
Last question. So hopefully we'll all be back on campus sooner rather than later. I know the university are just finalising plans around when we'll all be back. But what are you most looking forward to about being back on campus?
Bucks is a family. I'm looking forward to being back with people that are like-minded and seeing everybody's smiling faces, ready and raring to, go out and tackle the world head on. You don't get any vibes anywhere like you do at Bucks.
I think for me it's sort of just like the returning to normal, and like everything. I don't think anything's going to be how it was before. I think like social distancing and stuff is going to stick about for a while. I think just like seeing however many people there is in one place at the same time as each other is not so much as in I'm going to talk to like 1,000 people in a day or whatever, but it's just sort of like, it's just the normality of it,
Bernie, what are you most looking forward to about being back on campus?
I'm really looking forward to walking into those drama studios. We actually talked about it on our group chat, my class group chat, and I said, okay, look, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm probably going to cry as soon as I walk in. Dramatic, I know, that's why I'm doing this course. But honestly, I'm so looking forward to just doing the thing that I'm so passionate about and being able to do it. Just literally being able to do my course face to face, showing my piece that I've been working on. And also I'm so excited to go get a coffee and just have a walk with my friends, because I have missed muffin break, and if they are hearing this, I'm coming for you. Like, all my money's going to you because I miss your cakes. So just some form of normality, I guess, and just really getting to do the work that I absolutely love.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry. I agree with, like, literally everything you three have said. I really do think, like, books is a family. Like, all the teachers and staff that I've talked to over my past 3 years, they've literally been nothing but supportive and positive. Like, I've not had one bad experience with any of the staff at books. It's honestly, like, really nice. And especially when I talk to my other friends at other universities, they say that they don't have very good support, and I just feel, like, really lucky to be here, because, like, at other universities they don't get the same kind of help. So I'm looking forward to, like, the community, I think, the most.
I 100% agree with that. I have spoken to quite a few friends who go to a variety of universities, and the uncertainty and how unclear and lack of clarity that they have is ridiculous. It makes me feel so privileged to be with a community that actually really cares for their students. And I think that although people, like some people who I've met, haven't even heard of Bucks because it is originally a small uni, but it deserves so much publicity, and people need to notice it so much more because they really do care for their students. And I just want to say thank you to Bucks while I'm saying this for actually standing up for us students during these times, because it's been greatly appreciated from me.
100%. And I think, credit also needs to go, I think, to the Students' Union, who have spent so much time fighting for us. I know that when I was struggling with getting information about placement back in September, all I did was speak to Tash Neal, who's our Vice President of Education and Welfare, and she was on it. She was dealing with it. I would love the fact that they did the Break the Stigma during Wellbeing Month. They have done so much in terms of advocating for mental health, hidden disabilities. There's currently a campaign going along about including pronouns in our social media handles, email handles. I think, they talk about what's important for students and are there for students. And I think, we're so privileged to have, as Bernie said, a university that cares about us, but a student union that not only hears our voices, but does something with what we want to have at Bucks.
Cool. So that pretty much concludes our podcast now. Has anyone else got anything else they'd like to add, or something we haven't spoken about they'd like to talk about?
I just want to say, if you're listening to this and you're really struggling, that it's going to be okay, and to really reach out and to fight back on the stigma of mental health, and that we should all be looking out for each other, and yeah, it's going to be okay.
I think that's a really important message, that it will all be okay in the end. So that's a really good point to end on. So that brings us to the end of our mental health podcast, the first episode within the It Begins With Us series. Thanks to everyone for sharing your honest thoughts and feelings. It's been great to hear from you all, and we hope the conversation on mental health continues. If you'd like to know more about our support services, you can head to our website or email student.centre@bucks.ac.uk. Stay safe and stay inspired.